Hi, everybody. It's Michelle Gibson, and I'm here with my friend Joe. I had the pleasure of meeting Joe on a recent trip to the Balkans and had the pleasure of getting to know her. And I know that she is an amazing seer in many ways. And in this capacity, we'll be seeing her skills as a seer. She has multiple gifts and a lot of unique insights. And she and I share a connection in that I had the life experience of living in Alaska for 11 years altogether. Joe currently lives there, and I'll let her tell us a little bit more about that. It takes a strong woman to live there, and I know that from experience. It's a wonderful place to live, but it's not an easy place to live. And you have to see things a little different in order to embrace it and really get the most out of it. And so now I would like to turn the program over to Jo and have her tell us a little bit about herself and what she's going to be sharing with us today.
Okay, thanks.
Go
Yeah, I
for it.
can't see her, so I'll just talk. Michelle pulled me out of my comfort zone. I just want to make a little correction. I actually met her before the Balkan trip because I wanted to meet her before the Balkan trip. So I went to Phoenix and then we went out to lunch together. So that was wonderful. And then we went on the Balkan trip and that was even more wonderful. And we've stayed in touch. I do live in Alaska. It is very challenging for a woman, especially on her own, to live up here, but it's okay. We have our ups and downs. And now I have a new roommate, but she's over there laying down on a carpet, dog with no name. So it started out, I was sharing pictures, taking pictures for Michelle. I've taken pictures since I was a little kid. I saved up coupons and got a little camera, and I've always loved taking pictures. I just thought recently, I thought, why do I do this? I don't do anything with them. So I was so happy to take them for Michelle. And then she said, oh, can I use them in this presentation? I was like, that'd be perfect. And then she was like, well, why don't you present with me? And I was like, that's not good. But she has a way. Talked me into this. And as soon as I started coming up with something, I just had a lot of fun with it. So, yeah. So, do you want me to continue?
It's all yours. I'm so glad, Jo.
Okay.
I'm so glad.
Thank you. So the irises that you see on this screen, that is actually mine, and it was from Florence, and the one on the right is my right eye, and the one on the left is my left, and I think it's kind of cool. And it says, "The eyes are the window to my soul" in Italian, and I like how there's some purple in there, so that's kind of cool. So I should have said what I'm going to do is share some things from different parts of the world and tie them in. And as I talk about the buildings and the structures, because I'm really into detail. And I noticed in a lot of my photographs that that's what I take pictures of, which is a little different than most people who just take really, really big pictures. And when I looked up this temple where I had taken these pictures, I thought it was interesting. And I thought Michelle might like that too, that they mentioned the ninth century in here. It says the ninth century is mentioned as well as the 1600s, because I know dates are important to you. This is different from the 1800s that maybe supports the hypothesis of multiple resets, except for the fact is we don't know if any of this is true. There were masculine sculptures in there, which I thought was interesting because of your talk before, Michelle, where you mentioned the masculine and the feminine. And I also thought this was interesting because the statues of the five wisdom kings was on display at the time, and it's only once every 33 years. That was in Japan. And I have another picture of Japan, and I wanted to show you. I took this picture, and then I thought of Michelle when I was doing this because she's always talking about track being near water, being near power, and here you've got all three. And then I just thought this totem was cool.
Where was that again?
I knew you were going to ask me the town, and I can't remember what town I was in, but I was out in the country more. So this was kind of cool. And I thought of you with those flowers because you said things are always near a park. And isn't this interesting that these are just rocks in the water, an island, but they built this beautiful bridge to them. So this park is on that rock when you get to the edge of that bridge. And I thought just thought some of these rocks were spectacular, but I have no clue what they're for. Okay, we jumped to London. So this is a station, if you can believe that's what they made it into now, a railway station. I mean, with like shopping and all of that. And it opened in 1868. They're calling it Victorian engineering. Ha ha ha. And when we were going throughout Europe, I saw a lot of the 1800s dates. I thought that was interesting. Now, this is where I went down the rabbit hole I told you about. And one thing I want to mention too is you see the red brick, and the red brick that has a lot to do because there's iron in it. That again ties into power generation and electricity, things like that. So I wanted to point that out that that's all red, but that's just a coincidence, I'm sure. And that picture with the clocks, they have an obsession with clocks over there. I don't know if you've ever gotten feedback on that. But this reminded me of when I went to the University of Pittsburgh, the Cathedral of Learning, the narrative. Look at the Cathedral of Learning. And that narrative, which was, oh, this is the last neo Gothic architectural building here. And I noticed when I was trying to search how close St. Paul's Cathedral was next to the Cathedral of Learning, Avon came up. And when I went to search Avon, it took me down to Florida. There's Avon Parks there, and Avon in Celtic means river. So it's kind of like Avon Rivers, river, river. And you remember Shakespeare was Stratford upon Avon. So I thought that was interesting. And I know that, and this one is called Ben Avon, and Ben is the house of, like Ben Hur in Jewish. And I don't know if that's Hebrew or not really because you're speaking English. But anyways, it was proposed, that name, Ben Avon, was proposed by resident James Lewis, who thought the area reminded him of a hamlet near his birthplace in England. And then the Avon Park, the one in Florida, ironically says an English woman who settled in the area convinced so-and-so that the area was reminiscent of her home of Stratford upon Avon and persuaded him to change the name of the settlement to Avon Park. So that was 1926. But it was already there by 1886, and Avon was there by 1892. And then I typed in Sugarloaf, Pennsylvania, just as a joke for you. You and I think it was Dane said there's a Sugarloaf everywhere. So I typed that in just for you. There is a Sugarloaf in Pennsylvania.
Just goes to show.
So this is Bath. Many went there for healing. And this is on the Avon River. So again, here we go. And like I said, Avon is the Celtic word for river. And some believe that the Celts descended from the Atlanteans. And that's by a book by Quinn. The archaeological evidence suggests there was human activity around the hot springs back as far as 8,000 BC. Then in 863 BC, according to legend, this gentleman, Prince Bladud, he settled it around the hot springs. Again, they bring up Celtics. It says it's hard to prove the legend. By the Romans, as they use this as a place of worship, it lends credence to the Celtic beginnings. They talk about the Roman goddess of Minerva and how the Romans called it Aqua Sulis. From then on, large number of people would go to bathe in the hot waters to be healed. And one of my notes was, is this why they got us to take showers? So let's see. Fast forward to the Gregorian and Victorian eras when healing and spirituality found a new wave of popularity. I have no idea what they meant by that comment, but that's why the buildings surrounding it aren't Roman from this period. So that's the narrative on that. I want to point out the arches and the spires, which is all related to free energy, transmission of energy, sound healing, all of that. So notice this building's in a semicircle. I did not look that up, but I find it very interesting. It's something I noticed in that movie too, that each one of those sections was now somebody's residence. I thought that was interesting because I'm sure that's not the original. And then I took some pictures from the inside just to share. Always a tall door, right, for the giants. So that's Bath.
Joe, if you can go back to the first slide about Bath.
Sure.
I just wanted to mention my eyes are drawn down to the picture on the bottom right.
Yes.
With the spires and the rods at the top of the buildings and the horse and buggies and looks like some dirt on the streets. And that just speaks volumes about the historical narrative. And in so many later pictures, all of that stuff's been removed. The spires on the top.
Right.
A lot of these places had streetcars and they're gone. And to me, that just speaks a lot towards what we're looking at is how do they build this amazing architecture when we're not supposed to have the technology beyond what you see in that picture?
Are you saying you can't put granite in those horse and buggies?
Just saying.
It's easier to Photoshop black and white too, by the way.
Anyway, thank you for going back.
Yeah, no worries. No, that's great. So these are just more arches and spires and water. We know it's all related. I love the layers here in that middle picture. Yeah, I just wanted to share some more pictures. And isn't it interesting that this is how I take my pictures because that's subconsciously what I was attracted to. where most people might just get the whole building. I'm drawn to all of the detail in there. So next along the line, I went to Stonehenge. And I put the definition in there because I like that it says it's a prehistoric monument consisting of circle of stone or wooden uprights. And then if you look at the bottom, it said, oh, what's the origin of the word? It says back formation from Stonehenge. So in other words, they made up the word for Stonehenge, I guess.
One would think from that definition.
Etymology is one of my favorite things, so I do like studying words. Here we go. They knew this. It began on Stonehenge about 5,000 years ago, but it was built in stages over many years. The stone circle dates from about 2500 BC in the late Neolithic period. We all do like this part of it if you know Stonehenge at all. The sun rises over the heel stone on the longest day of the year, summer solstice, and sets on the shortest day of the winter solstice. And they said, oh, that's why it might be some sort of important rocks. Yes, we think so. But I do want to point out too, this has always bugged me. A lot of these places are considered World Heritage Sites, which is UNESCO, which is an agency within the United Nations. And that is one of them. So Stonehenge is one of them.
I have a lot of questions about UNESCO. I'll just put that on the table.
Yes. I don't know why I didn't pick up on that a long, long time ago, UN, UNESCO, but I knew it wasn't good. Anyways, this is one that's maybe a little less known is the Avebury Henge. And when I researched it a little bit, I noticed that Silbury Hill. So I just threw that in there because isn't that interesting how it looks like a pyramid? But this is Avebury Henge. And when I was looking up Bath and stuff, I noticed they're in a triangle. So Stonehenge and Avebury and Bath. Just saying, it's interesting. Avebury, again, between 2850 BC and 22 BC. Within this henge, it's the largest stone circle in Britain. Originally, it was about 100 stones. It's part of the Neolithic and Bronze Age. It was built over many centuries.
It's interesting that a lot of the crop circles that show up in England show up near Silbury Hill and in that area.
Isn't that interesting?
So more than one.
And what they're calling it is the largest artificial mound, which I thought was interesting. So were they saying it's man-made?
Yes. It's the tallest man-made mound in Europe.
Yeah, it compares in height and volume to the Egyptian pyramids. They always compare everything to the Egyptian pyramids, every pyramid, right? So this is Buckingham Palace, right? So you've got the large doors, huge gates. I mean, I like that picture because you can see the people, like a normal height. Doors are huge. And I put this picture in the lower right because it says Australia for Australia friends. And isn't that interesting, the thing on top of there, whatever that is. But I want to mention gold because it starts here and I pointed out along the way. But I used to wonder what all the fuss about gold was. And as I learn more about generating energy, now I understand what all the fuss is about. So when light meets a gold thin film, fascinating physics comes into play. One phenomenon known as surface plasmon resonance occurs when the electrons in the gold oscillate in response to light, affecting the transmission of light through the film. This means that light energy is transferred into electrons, and electrons play an essential role in numerous physical phenomena such as electricity, magnetism, chemistry, and thermal conductivity. This is why it can be seen atop many spires like an antenna, and also why it has been covered up on many buildings. Those are my comments. Anyways, I wanted to point that out because you notice how they leave some of that gold on there. And I think a lot more places had a lot more gold. So this is Windsor Castle. Again, all of the arches, I'm just showing the repeating. And if you look on that dome, was probably gold or some other metal. And what I've also noticed as I look at a lot of buildings up close, a lot of the times there's a facade on there. And when you get to the bottom, they're actually red brick underneath there. So that's kind of interesting. And I showed the picture on the right because, again, there's water, right? So again, water, arches, big doorways, and tiny little inset of somebody slaying a dragon. So that's kind of interesting.
Yes, it is. I just want to point out about those fancy windows there on the bottom left that are things that you look for because every aspect of these buildings seems to have a specific energy function. And my research has led me to findings that these windows are actually some kind of antenna. And
absolutely.
again, it's fascinating because these buildings are machines. They're technology in and of themselves.
I also wanted to say I did watch somebody's research on this before, and the theory was there were no glass windows before. All of the framework that you're speaking of and those shapes, they all had a function, and the glass was put on as part of the facade. And I was thinking about this, like in one of your videos, you mentioned the cymatic design of those windows. Well, but in the stained glass, and maybe that was the facade they put on, and it was actually framed like these windows here to do just that, to whatever they were supposed to do, whatever sound they were supposed to produce, or whatever they were supposed to project or transmit. Just a thought.
I've heard the same, that they didn't have the stained glass originally.
There's some more for you up close. And because you see, they put that stained glass in that one, but it already has that somatic design in it.
Absolutely.
So Dover Castle, another one, got the large doors. It completely looks like a facade to me. Whatever it was, it looks to me like they covered it up. Anyways, my little notes on that was, now this one's in 1066. William the Conqueror came to Dover after the Battle of Hastings to capture the port. So there you go. The castle was established by Henry II in 1179 to 89. He spent lavishly creating at Dover the most advanced castle design. That's what they always say, right? Somebody made a really nice house, somebody made a really pretty castle, and they spent all this money. It wasn't there before. And the immense great tower, a sophisticated building that combined defense, always defense, with a palatial residence. Joy Canterbury, right in there. And there's one of those stained glass windows. So that's the castle, they're the Cathedral of Canterbury. The White Cliffs of Dover, again, you've got the water towers, got your castles. Oh, wait, let me go back. This says before the English Reformation, the cathedral was part of the Benedictine monastic community known as Christ Church, Canterbury. Oh, that's funny. The Christ Church in New Zealand, huh? In 596, Pope Gregory ordered that Augustine of Canterbury, previously the abbot of St. Andrew's Benedictine Abbey in Rome, lead the Gregorian mission to convert the Anglo-Saxons to Christianity. The missionaries gained permission from the Kentish king to restore several pre-existing churches. Hello, I thought they built this. So pre-existing churches. He founded the cathedral in 597, dedicated it to Jesus Christ, the Holy Savior. When other dioceses were founded in England, Augustine was made the archbishop. So that's the big deal with this cathedral that doesn't look at all like a power generation or healing or anything like that. And I'm sure it only took a couple years to make it too. So the story with Dover is kind of interesting. I don't know why it took so many stories, but it has quite a few layers, like the transportation of prisoners to the colonies. When that ended, the employment of convicts became a problem. So they needed a place to store them. What else did they do with this? Yep, they used the convicts to build this stuff. They always seem to do that. In 1896, 1800s, just after 11 years, the prison closed its gate, a situation that didn't please Parliament. There's an unfinished tramway there. I thought you might find that interesting. Earthworks to create a new section of tramway were carried out in 1911 to 12, designed to extend the existing Dover line to St. Margaret's and Martin Hill. The route was created as a wide, gentle slope to raise the trams from the promenade. The project was never completed. Imagine that. And today, the remnants of the tramway cutting provides a striking feature halfway between sea level and the visitor center. And the aerial ropeway at the White Cliffs was designed to deliver coal to the nearby port. Okay.
Now that looks like something I'm not familiar with. I have not heard
So
of the sound mirrors.
wow, I found something. So that's
You
there
did.
at Dover. Sound mirrors were one of the first early warning detection systems invented to give advance notice of approaching enemy aircraft. Come on. These large upright concrete dishes worked by focusing the sound, now that I believe, from the plane's engine so it could be heard before it was visible. There are two mirrors at Fan Bay. The first was constructed in 1917. It's believed to be the oldest surviving examples in the country. The second was built at some point in the 1920s. They were covered up during the 70s, but work to remove the soil and debris to fully reveal the structures was completed by volunteers in 2014. So there you go. Kind of interesting, huh?
So you actually were able to go in there and look around and
Yeah,
see them
well, you
yourself.
wouldn't have been before, but yes. Yes. I thought you might like that door in the sidewalk thing. Now that when I take those type of pictures, I think of you because I know there's something underneath there. So, and there's an obelisk again. I have little notes on obelisk, but we'll talk about when we get there. I did another map because lo and behold, another triangle from Dover, Ashford, and Canterbury. I like the door to wear and just more arches and things like that. I'm sure the triangles everywhere are just a coincidence too. Moving to Paris, see the gold? There's that gold again. So I love these domes and the detail. Here's some close-ups. I like the one where I got the hole underneath it, so you get a little more detail up close of the Eiffel Tower there. Some of these smaller pictures I took are of the same building, just up close, because my feeling is like they overwhelm you by looking at the big picture. So nobody's looking at the detail, which I think is where all the stories and secrets are. Like when you see goats' heads and people murdering each other and naked babies that look like grown men. You think they're little cherubs from far away and you get close and you're like, oh, what is that?
So it's interesting that with the hole there, is that a window?
I know. Is that great? No, I'm sure it was for a gun for defense. Every time you see a hole in the building, it's a gun port. And look at this one. And that's from that building. Like when you just zoom in and pick up on the detail, that's all from that same building. Like that hole. And that creepy guy above the hole, I don't know if my pointer's working on there. He shows up all over Europe. I'm not sure who he is. If anybody knows, they can tell you.
He looks disturbingly like Santa Claus, doesn't he?
I was thinking the same thing, but I didn't want to say that. Maybe that's where they got the face for Santa.
These are in Paris, correct?
Yes. Yep. And there's the l'Arc de Triomphe, which, of course, that was only built for celebration of the war, has nothing to do with energy transmission. And then wait till I show you more pictures of it. Even though arches are the strongest form of architecture, they follow the keystone method of building. Check that out. Okay, so power energy, free energy, or healing. Do you see how from the top view you can see every single road coming from that? That's just a coincidence. And interestingly enough, when I was on top of it, I took all these pictures from every angle. And I don't know why I did. I just felt like it. Maybe because I didn't have a drone.
I believe it's located in the place of the star. L'Étoile is the name of the physical location. Very impressive engineering there.
Well, it was really just to celebrate the end of the war, and they made the streets like that so everybody could parade down them. Okay, Le Louvre. I couldn't wait to get to Le Louvre. That middle picture, you see that screen? I saw that all over Europe, and when we were there, they build these elaborate screens that look just like the building when you're far away while they're doing something underneath there, which is kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I saw it in Milan. You take a double take because it looks like the building, and then you get closer and you're like, whoa, that's not the building. That must cost a pretty penny. Anyways, Louvre itself in English means slats that you open and close like shutters over a window. To me, that in itself is interesting. Are they hiding? You know, you close the shutters, open the shutters. They claim the name is disputed. The name derives from an association with a wolf hunting den. That's in Latin. So it's kind of interesting, Le Louvre, but it's a crazy building. Look at it. It's just amazing. This is still the Louvre. The Louvre is so huge. And I forgot to put in here the picture of the pyramid. They built a glass pyramid, and people said, why'd you build a glass pyramid in front of it? And they said, oh, because we ran out of room. It's literally just covering an elevator to go somewhere. So it's like, look at all this. They ran out of room. Okay. But again, cover ups, this obsession with clocks. I don't know. They just decided the clock was the easiest thing to cover up those circles, I guess. So here I kind of did a layered thing for you where I showed you the big stained glass, and then I blew it up and then blew up the detail. You could see, what's it say? 1866. So there you go. And right in the middle, see the ravens on that one? It's often associated with loss and ill omen, yet its symbolism is complex. As a talking bird, the raven also represents prophecy and insight, and they've long been associated with Celtic symbolism. There's that Celtic again. Chaos and death, or the strength of a warrior. So it's kind of all over the place. In many ancient Celtic poems, warriors are praised for their ability to feed ravens on the bodies of their enemies. They're also seen as messengers between worlds, connecting us with our ancestors and reminding us that we are all connected by a shared history. We just don't know what the history is, but thank you.
They're all heraldry. So coats of arms in those stained glass
Mhm.
windows, which is very interesting.
Here, I was just showing you that blown up. Like these people are crowning a sheep. I don't know what they're doing to the stag up there. And then you've got a phoenix. It looked like a woman on the right, but it's really hard to tell sometimes. Sometimes the men have feminine features and the women have masculine features. And then there's one on the left too. But I just thought for fun, I'd blow those up. And imagine each one of those squares has a different story or a different thing going on.
Those are really good catches, Joe. And I think it adds a lot of strength to the idea that the stained glass came after and that the windows
Yes.
were originally without glass because it's like, what's the story?
And they dated it. Has been my theory is that you're healing with sound frequency and vibrations sent out over the water. So these cathedrals are made like this. Luckily, this gentleman was there when I was there and he played the organ. So that was very cool. I felt very blessed. I'm certain that wasn't the original connection to the organ though, but he played it.
I'm sure you're right. An important piece of the puzzle. The organs are very
Yes.
important to our story.
Yes. Up above that organ, look at that window. Again, the cymatic. I mean, look at that. Can you imagine the sound going out through there, right? It's generating something. And these tall archways for the giants to get through, I guess. It's all very fascinating. This was to show you again more arches, the gold arches around the water, the spire. Those were all from that same building. If you see a picture, I just blew it up. Why they gave it the diagonal stripes, I don't know. We threw a clock in there to cover that hole again, and just more details here. Here's Notre Dame, but the towers on top too. And then if you blow up that little section of doorway to the right, you see that detail. And look at those people, whatever they're doing up in that circle on the far right there. And you've got a row of people below it, and then another row of people. There's a lot of things going on in that cover up. I mean, in that art.
And even the big doors have a connection to sound. And if you look
Of
at the,
course, but look what they did to it. Look at all the stuff they added. How you said it was with sound, but see how they have little doors so you can walk through it. Now, probably none of that was there before for that sound to get through, like you're saying.
yeah, there's just so many questions. Now, were you there before or after the fire?
Before. That's what I shared with you that I felt blessed because this is what it looked like in 2015. You know what I like about that clock though? It says Paris Orleans under it. Interesting, huh? So yeah, we stick clocks in the holes. That's a quick cover up. And you know, being in Europe, people don't care about the time that much. They relax and take naps, and you would think by seeing all these clocks, people were obsessed with what time it was. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
understand.
that's a harder one to call.
So here we've got some more gold, and this is a museum over here, but there's more gold on this bridge. This bridge must have fascinated me because I took so many pictures of it. It was just so fascinating to me, all of the detail. So there's the gold, and I have another picture, and you'll see the thing from the middle. This is what was in the middle of the bridge, that person that's wearing the gold leaves, the woman, all this gold just everywhere, especially on that dome. Then I blew them up, and we really start to look at them and their body shapes. And what is this, a raven on this person's arm? Sometimes it looked like on the sculptures, they wanted to get everything in the picture to where it didn't make sense. But I guess it made sense to them. Like, what are they holding? And then there's this bird just sitting on her or him or whatever. And this strange gold around, if that's a male next to her, I don't know if that's a female or a male, but around its head. It's definitely symbolizing something to tell us something that we have no idea what it is.
I agree with you. I think you focus on things most people don't even pay attention to.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's so much detail. These are again blown up of that archway. First of all, the door's huge. Then there's gold again. And then what are the pictures in those archways? And then when you blow them up, some of them look really, really strange, like the person on the right. There's a lot going on up there. And that's why I'm curious about expending all the energy to cover it up so elaborately. And the only thing I can think of is it distracts you. It just, you stand back and go, oh, look how beautiful. And you don't care that that was free energy or healing or whatever it was, right? Oh, there's your holes at the bottom too. You like that? You got more holes.
I'm think maybe sound. I mean, I think it goes back to sound. I think that was very
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah, it was very important. So this one, I blew it up and it's the serpent. around, the rod of Asclepius or
Asclepius or something like that.
anyways, it's the same symbol as the Royal College. I don't know if it was just in the United States, but they morphed it into do you say it caduceus? The one that has the two serpents. But I thought that was interesting that it's up on that building. So that's just blown up from the top of that building.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Just
You see them with one serpent and you see them with two serpents. And usually they're
and
associated with medicine in some way.
again, here's just more gold, more detail. You blow it up, and then do you see the serpents on the thing that he's holding?
I sure do. In his left hand. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? But if you just step back and look at that ceiling, you take a picture and go, wow, that's so beautiful. And then you zoom in and go, what is going on? If you zoom in on that ceiling, those numbers right there say 1300, 1491, 1687. And if you really look at it, the ones were all added. From just looking at it from here, you can see there's a space, a gap, but they don't even necessarily use the same fonts I noticed when they add the ones. But anyways, that's way up in the corner of that ceiling. Who's going to notice? And then again, I circled the serpents going up that staff.
Fantastic catches. Look up. Remember, look up.
Exactly. It's something, I'll tell you. This is interesting to me. They gave the Egyptian art a token art when really, in the little bit that I have studied, some of this, Egypt played a huge role and they just kind of gloss over it. This I thought you might like. This is blown up and you see the organ, and then you blow it up. Then you see like sun worship there at the top middle that's blown up from that. And then you go a little deeper and they have the sun above Christ who they're crucifying there. But you also look to the right. I know it's blurry because I had to keep blowing it up. And you'll see in that worship of the sun, there's a pyramid right in the middle. And I could not figure out what language that was down there. I tried searching Sanskrit, Latin, runes, whatever. But if you look at it, it's like an upside down U, a T, and an upside down U. And then it looks like an apostrophe. And I don't know what that's from.
I can help.
What is it?
It's called the Tetragrammaton. It's the letters of the name of God, Yahweh,
Oh,
without the vowels. So
wow.
what?
And can you say it again?
Yod,
Tetra what?
Tetragrammaton, Yod He Vod
Wow.
He. So it would be Hebrew.
But I did look up Hebrew and it didn't look like that. That was one of the first things I looked up. So that's interesting. But now I know what to search for in Hebrew. I'll look up Yahweh in Hebrew. But
And
it's interesting that they put Yahweh in a pyramid and in sun worship. I can't remember what this place was, but I threw this in to show you just because we talked about water and there's a water wheel. They got this huge gazebo, which was probably thrown on top because of the water, all of this water going on. I'm thinking this might be near Versailles because I think what comes up next is Versailles. And I just love that tree with the burls on it. I was just showing you that's there. Oh, yes, here we go, Versailles. Look at all the gold. So there's that Paris Orleans Club. They live out on the river. I thought that was kind of cool. I couldn't leave Big Ben off. What I thought was interesting, that tall, skinny thing on the left, that's a barometer that was I think that was in Versailles inside. I don't even know if anybody paid attention to that. It was just off in a corner somewhere. Like, what is that? Okay. Then we go to Rome. I said, when in Rome? And I seriously meant when, because look at that one. It just kind of fell off to the side there.
yeah, that was like a red letter year in the reset. A lot going on in 1870. When I saw that picture when we were looking through your pictures, that was one that just jumped out at me because there was so much going on in 1870.
Well, one of the things I did enjoy about Italy is they left the doors alone, and I circled it because they cut them smaller so they could fit through them. Because why open the big doors, right? So I just thought that was clever. And they'd leave the big locks there and things, though, or big handles, but they'd have the little doors so a normal person could fit through them. Those were everywhere.
Really makes you wonder what's going on there.
This is your star fort. The reason I had these pictures, all this layering and texturing. I mean, you see red brick, brown brick, you see cement. And this is what kept capturing my eye to it, was that there's so much going on here with different materials. And that smaller picture, what is going on with the red brick? And then all of a sudden they have that cement holding it up. And below it, there's patchwork. I mean, there's just so much going on with that building. I don't know. It was starting to bug me because I didn't know what to look at. It's like there's a lot going on. Look at that left picture. I mean, the bottom doesn't match the top, but you'll see there's arches in there. And then it's like they covered it up. They made it look like a ship, which I thought was interesting. I think it looks like a ship, anyways. There's some more of it. This one on the right bothered me. That was me looking up. Look at that rock,
Yeah.
smooth stuff, red brick, something on top, just lots of stuff going on.
It looks like pictures of bastions that I've seen, like in Valletta, Malta, where that's like
Oh, okay.
original bedrock. And you find the same thing on the Giza Plateau where the Sphinx is, the same kind of effect with the rock looking like that. And then something connected to it. So, like the
And then they
Sphinx
just built around it.
or into it or something, but it's very ancient. Whatever it is very old.
Yes. But I know that's not the story they tell in there.
No.
So these bothered me. If you look at his wrists on the left, it looks like they broke that sculpture so they could force that cross in there, which is not even the same material. And then the wings were just kerplunked on. The wings are not the same. If you look at his outfit, what he's wearing, it's very graceful and flowing. And when you pay attention to the sculptures there, you can tell the difference between those wings, which are not graceful, they're just plopped on, and that they added that cross. So to me, it's really obvious. It's not the same. And I have no idea why, other than they wanted you to think that was something that it's not. And then the one on the right is just, I call unexplainable. I mean, there's blobs on the bottom, these white blobs. The leg on the left doesn't look like it matches the one on the right. And then it's like, okay, we'll just stick something else on top and on the side. And then you see the hand under it. Where's that coming from? So yeah, it was like a garbage pile. Like, oh, we have this leftover stuff.
Very interesting.
Anyways, here's some more with the buildings with the very big doors. Look at that clock, how large it is, please. They covering up a hole. And then whatever's going on in that statue does not look good. So we'll just throw an obelisk on top of that. Some of these things look like the people look like they're in agony. These are those cathedrals there. I mean, look at them. All has to do with sound.
The one on the left reminds me of the Sistine Chapel.
No, this one, I think this is the Basilica de Santa Maria. I walked around Rome so much. I was getting mixed up, but I think I figured it out today. I'm like, no, I think that was the Basilica of Santa Maria. I always point out these interesting, they had these in Pittsburgh too, this building that follows the shape, right? It comes over the corner like that, and then it goes down the street. And at the end of this building is usually the roundabout that had either the water or whatever was going on there. Again, showing the organ for sound and gold going on. So just more pictures of that. Same area. Spent a lot of time here with my binoculars. You could just tell that things were added on and they didn't make sense. You can see that rock, and then they just started kerplunking statues and things on this. I'm imagining this was probably a bath type thing before too, where people would come for healing. Yeah, and it's just been so altered. But again, people just look and go, oh, look how pretty. Can I throw a penny in there? And then on the right is blown up. Again, all of these.
What is
I
that
don't even know
figure
what
in
to
the
describe.
center? What is that? Is that a
What
child in
the
some kind of robe on the right hand side, right in
I
the
was
middle?
wondering that too because it looks like a child's face. Like I'm telling you, these these things are just bizarre looking. But then what's coming out below him? Is that supposed to be hair? Is that what is that? They don't look natural. And then the guys hanging out at the top again, oh, cute little cherubs, but were they? Because they're playing trumpets. So are they babies? Are they men? Are they dwarves? I don't know. And then that thing is standing on the head of somebody. See below it? There's that head. Another, it looks like a child with a lot of hair. Sometimes I noticed when I zoomed in, though, the hair was really like snakes, kind of like Medusa, but it wasn't necessarily the face of Medusa. So just more of those angled buildings, right? They end because the water, in my opinion, flew up the streets, rolled up the streets. There's an archway that kind of proves it. It came through there. They sent their sound, they sent their water, they sent healing. This is creepy stuff.
That is creepy stuff.
That one on the right really bugged me. So, yeah, creepy stuff. This was originally when I took pictures for you that, I thought were glaring examples of mud floods. The slanted streets, the windows that end. Yeah. And then light for the underground, which doesn't exist under there, right?
The prism pavement lights that you show here were found around the world. And there might be strips left here and there in different places, but they got removed. And it was basically the same idea as the canals, starting out with canals and then replacing them with railroads and then replacing the railroads with the cars. Same idea. The electric light came along, so this low-cost, efficient way of lighting wasn't needed anymore. It's a very similar story. So what was it about these pavement lights that they don't want us to know, which I find very interesting?
Yes, and the place that I saw them, the multicolored, were in the Seattle Underground. And that Seattle Underground's pretty interesting because they had a bank, everything under there. That tells you a lot right there. And then they said when they were rebuilding or whatever after a fire or something, whatever the story was, they put big ladders for people to go down to the bottom. Nobody ever died until they fell off the ladders, the story went. And I was like, what kind of cockamamie stuff is this? I don't know. And then they said they had to bring dirt in to build it back up. And none of it made sense to me, but that was the story.
Yeah, the story around Seattle is pretty crazy with these
Yes, it
places.
is. So here I announced this one is the Basilica de Santa Maria, but I think it was very similar to the other one. And the reason I get into this roof here, I'm going to scroll to the next thing. This literally says America, but they had these really old dates. So I put America. Was this before it was born? Like, what is going on here with the time frame? So this says America, this says Africa, and that other one says Asia. If you zoom in on it, I was sitting there with binoculars. That's how I saw it. But it is interesting.
It is.
This was just a skylight, nothing to see. I mean, the sound, look at the windows, how tall up there. You can only imagine. I wish we knew. It would just be fun to know and just to experience it. Here we go to the Colosseum. Nothing to see here either because the Colosseum was only for games, had nothing to do with water or sound transmission. All those arches, that was just to let people in. And look at the inside of it. That sound, it literally was called Flavian Amphitheater or something. And I was trying to look at the structure and it seemed like the levels wrapped around, almost like the numbers.
Golden ratio?
Yes, thank you. The golden ratio, because you think it looks like it's flat, but it kind of looked like it was from the side, it kind of looked like it was coming up and around. And we know that it was an amphitheater too. So I'm not sure. Whatever it was so powerful. Look how hard they worked at to destroy it. I mean, look at all the holes in that lower picture. And then I think so it says, notice the holes in destruction, the multitude of arches. The map shows truly all roads lead to the Colosseum. You know how they always said all roads lead to Rome? Look at all those roads leading to the Colosseum. I think there must be more to it. It even said the Colosseum was once filled with water, but it said it was only to do a sea battle. Titus staged a sea battle inside the Colosseum, flooding the floor of the arena with a few feet of water so ships could engage in mock combat. I think it was probably always filled with water.
In Pula, Croatia, there's actually a Colosseum that is intact, unlike the one in Rome. The one in Croatia looks perfect, and it's the same kind of structure.
Isn't that interesting? I wonder if they had games there. It says the way the masonry is laid out in lines and rings, it looks like something that should have a minotaur in the middle of it. Interesting. This is the hypogeum from the Greek word underground. It was comprised of a labyrinth, series of arches, tunnels, passageways, and 36 trap doors that allowed animals and gladiators to make dramatic entrances. But they did say, this I thought was interesting, I don't know if it's true, it was outfitted with a velarium, which is a retractable awning, and occasionally a cooling herb-infused mist was sprayed over the crowd. That seems off the wall. Sounds cool, but it's like, where's that awning anyways? That's kind of a big statement to make. And how did they retract it? I mean, did somebody come in and they used all those prisoners or the slaves and they rolled up the awning?
All the gladiators.
Here's another triumphant arch right next to the Colosseum. Probably a transmitter of some sort, but again, the arch, a generator or a transmitter or something is being sold as built to celebrate victory. And does that look like a house to you on the right? There's Nero's house.
No, not really.
And I said the facade on the arch helps to tell stories of death and war victory to cover up something else. Yeah, that's probably where Nero was enjoying himself while Rome burned. Anyways.
Another thing about those arches is they tend to line up with lunar and solar events.
sure that's just a
Yeah.
coincidence. I was kind of getting angry about the stories being told on these places, so I was copying an attitude of not asking, and I couldn't find this online either. I took these pictures, but I don't know what those were supposed to represent. Do you know what those are?
Not a clue.
I was
Sidewalks
like,
to nowhere.
but anyways, this is one of the pyramids that's in Rome. So I put when in Egypt, when in Rome. But I wanted to show the triangle from the Basilica de Santa Maria to the Colosseum to the pyramid. So it's interesting. And then all of a sudden, look at the left of the pyramid. Somebody decided we're going to build a wall because they didn't like the fact that there was an Egyptian pyramid there. Oh, and the story is it was a tomb, but of course the grave robbers came and stole it. You know how they do, because everybody goes around looking for graves in a pyramid. So that's what's going on there. I thought that was interesting. See, I got hooked on drawing those triangles.
And the stories are quite humorous. Between the grave robbers and example you gave earlier of the prisoners building everything.
Yeah, those prisoners, they had plenty of work to do. So here's St. Peter's Basilica. I did not go inside because again, I had that attitude. I'm like, one, I didn't want to wait 4 hours in line to hear some other story that wasn't true. And once you're in those cathedrals, they tend to all start to, you see similar paintings, similar things in there. I'm sure this is more elaborate. But notice the Vatican picked the biggest dome, right? I'm sure that's not a coincidence. But what did strike me while I was there is how much in disarray it was, letting things crumble and things like that. And there's that huge obelisk again. Here's the part about the obelisk too, and the pyramid. I'm sorry. It's the pyramid of Cestius. There are 8 Egyptian obelisks in Rome and then 5 replicas. So I think I showed one of the replicas earlier, but there's 8 of them. During ancient times, obelisks were mainly placed on hippodromes, and only later, during the rule of Pope Sixtus V, were obelisks placed on the church squares to show the way for pilgrims. Because you couldn't see the dome from where you were at. The Pyramid of Cestius is only one of its kind. It was built around 12 to 18 BC, constructed as a tomb of Gaius Cestius, a magistrate and member of one of Rome's 4 great religious corporations. It's believed he commissioned the tomb's construction after Egypt became part of the Roman Empire. This is me. There is more to the connection between Rome and Egypt, and some believe Egypt was the center of civilization and the powers that be did all they could to destroy it. Now, on this page, I wonder why the Vatican wanted this space. The ancient Egyptians, for the obelisks, they called them tekenu, which means to pierce the sky. It was designed to be a wider at its rectangular base than its pyramidal top and was often covered with an alloy of electrum.
I know there's a reason they wanted that space. It's very special.
So now we're in Florence. And this is Duomo. There's the
Is.
creepy guy on the right. He's just hanging off the side of that building.
I've actually been to a lot of the places that you have pictures of. So that's pretty cool.
Awesome.
We've been to a lot of the same places. So I have been here.
Oh, yeah. We have a lot in common. So here's some more arches, and look how they prettied that one up. I do think that they were transmitters of some sort. If you remove the layers, you would see materials underneath it that assisted in whatever its purpose was. Sometimes when you need things to travel further to, you kind of give it a push, right? A charge. And perhaps that's why the water went through them or something, to travel far distances. I don't know. Because not every place has a big arch.
And before you move on, I noticed a carousel in front of the arch on the left. There's something going on with carousels too.
Really?
Yes.
That I don't know about.
So there is something going on with carousels. And whether it's opening portals or what function they served, I don't know. All I know
I think I saw that movie where they go in the middle and they don't come back out. So just some more, like the house on that part of that arch there. It's kind of interesting. Get another organ showing. There's that wall. I took that picture for Campbell because he was into walls just being somewhere. Like that wall just is there. And a beautiful picture of Florence from me going up to the very top of the hill. So, and getting lost. And so I went to Pisa after Florence, and I helped save the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I heard they were correcting it. I went ahead and helped push it back up. I thought the stripes on here were interesting. I don't know what that's about, but that's just the blow up of the top of the Leaning Tower. And these are right beside it. But look how this is amazing. All of these structures they're so complex and they're so gorgeous. But then, like I said, you zoom in and you see strange things, which I did on the right again. The back of that top statue had that head. Again, it looks a little like a Medusa thing going on. It looks like snakes. See, snakes in the head there.
It sure does.
But what is going on the right?
Let me take a look at that because that looks like a mer person.
Yes.
So they were called Tritons, Tritons. And there's a whole bunch of them. So I'm assuming they were real, are real, but we
Mm-hmm.
don't know the story about them, but they're in fountains and found in a lot of different places.
Okay, so this triangle ends in Pistoia. I figured these two had to be connected. Florence is very close to Pisa. And then I looked up Pistoia, and those two pictures were what I got off the internet of Pistoia. Look at that. There's a dome, there's another building and a tower. Tuscany, I liked this because we actually have bells in the tower. As you and I know, when we were looking at them, a lot of the bells, which are probably sound healing, were removed from a lot of the towers. And in Europe, they were either removed or they were stabilized to make them so you couldn't bring them. And this one actually had a bell in it. Yeah, many of them were missing or stabilized. You can see these things going on here. I think that was in Murano. Notice the red brick. That arch is pretty cool. We just put apartments on top of that one. There's some of your waterways. And then Venice. I like the steps and the doors. Yeah, it was wild though, because you know cars, right? You're like, wait, there's no sound. Here's Milano. Huge buildings, more spires, and look at that door. Look at that arch and the door. I mean, look how small that person is.
You've got more of those gargoyle kind of heads up at the top
Yep.
there, but
Mhm.
right next to the heads on either side of the doorway, you had that curlicue looking shape,
Yes. Hmm.
which is the same shape of like a cello, violin. I can't think of what that part of the instrument is called, but it's the same idea.
Yes, it is. I know exactly where you mean. So I thought this was interesting for the somatic, but again, I don't know if that looks like a phoenix or something up there. And then the thing on the left was on the floor. It's very elaborate. They were all over the floor. Kind of interesting.
I've seen that shape, the one on the right, the big one in the
Yeah.
center. I've seen that shape in a number of different places, exactly the same thing. I've seen it at the Coricancha in Peru, in Cusco, Peru. I've seen it on a window of a synagogue in New York City. I've seen it at the Alhambra in Granada. It has some
It has a
significance.
significance. Yes, that eight-sided star. And then I forget the supposed Star of David, the one that oh, I can't think of his name right now, that he actually created that for Israel. I don't, that one's not eight though. Is it six?
That's the right track. I think it's
Yeah.
connected to Israel.
Yes. And this star is absolutely everywhere. All those cathedrals, everywhere I was taking pictures. And if you look in that same picture down below, you have more of it all over the place, just repeated pattern. And then at the top, you have what looks like the waves, right? Or that circular thing that you saw on the exterior up on that door. So, but it kind of looks like ocean waves or something. Just incredible sound, acoustics, layers and layers. And they turned it into like a massive shopping thing. See, Louis Vuitton. So the thing on the right is a blow up of the thing on the left. Don't those look like mature faces? Very fascinating to look at. Another large door for you. And then that thing on the right is on top of that door.
Give me
You look up,
nightmares.
what a greeting. You're trying to be positive, and this thing's at your door when you come home. Oh my gosh. But it's a pretty door, the wood door. You know, that's not the original. And look how they cut the window. Oh my gosh, look, that looks like a spider web
It,
down below.
it sure
That's
does.
funny.
That's what came to my
Cobweb.
mind.
Oh yeah, and then look above it. It's got another one of those creepy things. Maybe those are up the top of that window too. But again, they cut it in half because it was too big for them. So okay, this one is a video. So let's.
Oh, wait, there's more. Luz, ampere, ampere, ampere. Wait, ampere? Ampere? You mean like electricity? No, come on. Wire? Electricity? No, not an ampere. Wait, you mean it goes down that street? Which leads to those circles? Which used to be something? I'll talk about it. Seriously? Look at the years. Seriously? That they made that street name. Oh my goodness. You have a book first around this. There's that again. Just coincidence.
There's the cement thing. Probably explains the rest of that part. So, I'm only thinking of all of you and that I can share this with you. Am I looking at history that was erased? Everything is circular here. Interesting, whatever those are. And this one. And yet, it's one of the biggest traffic circles I have ever seen. All of these buildings and streets around it. I'm trying to slow this down because I was sitting too fast with my video. Look at all these streets. There's no way that this could have been water flowing from this central location, and perhaps these were some sort of crypt, coffin-like things that says, yeah, we killed it. See, even the sidewalks lead to the street, which leads straight to here. And that one, oh, you decide.
So that's in Milan.
It is in Milan, and that's where, again, kind of like the L'Arc de Triomphe in Paris, right? Where you have this circular, something was generating from the middle, and the water rolls out down the streets, right? To heal or sound or whatever you were getting from it. And it became so obvious because they try to put traffic circles in the United States, which are always confusing. They're tiny. So they said they came from Europe, but they're not really traffic circles, are they? They were these systems that they had to make into a traffic circle because you couldn't get around it unless they ripped out the whole thing. I don't know.
The name of the street is Ampere.
Well, it's like Ampere, right? Like you have, that was one of the streets. I just happened to pick that one to walk up. And that's why I was like, are you kidding me? It's Ampere? Like in electricity? That just blew my mind. I just happened to pick that street to walk. I could have picked any of the other streets to walk up. Also, the buildings in that video, I don't think is up there. It's curved. And then I just wanted to show you, I showed you on the left, must have taken a screenshot when I was there, and you can see how it's circular and all the streets run into it. And again, it's a park, like you said, they had a park. So that's me from the airplane leaving Italy. And I thought you'd like these big, tall rock things. I love taking pictures from the plane. I know that's not the best place to take them, but boy, does it tell a story from up there. Look at those.
Yep, it does. Definitely.
And then I just did a few extra, like this is Dubrovnik. There was that thing on the right. We went one night and we took a ride, and that is one thing I noticed in Europe. Spring water was everywhere. And we went to that place on the right, and the gentleman that we paid to take us on a ride brought glasses with him, and we drank that from that spring water. And then I liked that mountain down. It totally looks like a pyramid, that mountain down below.
Totally does.
It's one of those castles that's just sitting on top of a rock. Cool tree. Those were just my fun pictures when we went to that. Was like a ski lodge place we're at. Working bell. Here we go. Listen how long that vibration lasts. Isn't that cool? More arches. I couldn't remember where this was. I figured you would remember.
Visegrad.
Visegrad. Thank you. And those were the towers that they told us one was from each religion. That was kind of interesting. We went on the boat ride, and there were 3 towers, and one was like Christian. They all symbolized 3 different religions, and then they built these buildings since the war. So just layers. Men speak opinions, not facts. Our eyes see perspective, not truth. Marcus Aurelius. So yeah, thank you for letting me share that.
You're very welcome. And thank you for putting that together and jumping off the cliff.
I did jump off a cliff, yeah. But it was easier because I couldn't see you or me. It's actually easier that way because I'm just talking to myself, and I do that anyways.
And that's why you're doing this is important. And anybody that is doing their own research and asking questions, is it takes all of us. Men speak opinions, not facts. Our eyes see perspective, not truth. We've all got a unique piece of the puzzle that we're bringing forward when we step out of our comfort zones and share what we see. And I really have enjoyed this conversation and your presentation, Joe. And I'm glad I can share my platform with people that don't necessarily have one. taking tentative steps into the unknown and getting this kind of thing out. But no matter whether you have a platform or don't have one, it's a joy to be able to bring people on like yourself with your own unique perspective, and as a community work together to put this gigantic puzzle together, because it's all important. We all see something, and it's coming from sincerity to get this out there. This is what I saw, and what you see isn't necessarily be what I see or someone else sees. So it's an important part of this journey together to bring back what we've lost in terms of our history and in terms of what this place really is.
And I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you found it at all interesting, because I always felt kind of like an outsider, because this is how I would see these details, and people either didn't want to talk about it or see it or know it. So I didn't really think anybody would be interested. And then as I accumulated thousands of pictures over the years, I thought, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to go back and look at it or what? So at least I got to do something with these.
And if you ever want to do something like this again, just let me know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure. And we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.